CSGO just hit 1.8 million concurrent players.
Down and follows it up. They're all lining up. Coldzera with an ace.
That's the highest player base this game has ever seen, and it came out in 2012. That is ancient in the gaming world. You know what else came out in 2012? Halo 4, Mass Effect 3, and the first Avengers movie. This game is so old that we were still enjoying Xbox 360 game lobbies.
You can't do anything right. You're a disappointment to your family. You should fucking die.
Somehow though, Valve has not only kept CSGO alive for the past 11 years, but kept the game growing. But it's no accident that Counter-Strike is thriving. Valve knew exactly what they were doing, and it all started with Half-Life. Half-Life was amazing. The gameplay was incredible, and the storytelling was groundbreaking, being the first game to tell a story without cutscenes.
Weren't you supposed to be in the test chamber half an hour ago?
But what really made this game so amazing was the mods. Mods like Black Mesa, Team Fortress, and Counter-Strike. A mod made by two dudes in college trying to pad their resumes. But what Min Guzman Lee and Jesse Cliff didn't know was they were really about to pad those resumes, because after a few versions, Counter-Strike took off. You could poke your head into almost any college computer or dorm room and find a crew playing a custom Counter-Strike lobby. But why was this mod on Half-Life so popular? Well, a few reasons. The game was simple, the maps were clean and polished, and the gunslinging was beyond satisfying. You just 1v5 the whole team? You hit a one-tap headshot collateral with a deagle? Everything about this game was satisfying because nothing was random. If you did something cool, it's because you were awesome, not the game. It was pure, unadulterated skill. You deserved every win that you got. Not to mention the bragging rights with your friends. And gamers everywhere were playing this game over LAN or dial-up. There's no matchmaking though, so you'd have to buy or rent your own server and then get your friends together, often organizing matches over a forum. This game kept growing, and by the fourth beta mod, Counter-Strike caught Valve's attention. Lee and Cliff, two college kids with little dev experience, sold the intellectual rights of Counter-Strike to Valve, who, by the way, hired them as developers to continue working on the game. This was the first time Valve had bought the rights to a mod, but it wouldn't be the last. So with the funding from Valve and a larger team behind the project, the devs got to work expanding and polishing the game. And only 1 year after the mod release for Half-Life, Valve officially released the retail version of Counter-Strike. This game was incredible. Not because they did anything special, but because they released a version that was basically identical to the mod. Valve understood that the original gameplay was close to perfect, so they kept it the same, making minor changes until they reached version 1.6 in September of 2003, the sweet spot. In this last major update, Valve did some weapon balancing, 2 new guns were added, and more maps were included. Not to mention, they added a riot shield, which was controversial, but it sure did make casual play goofy and fun.
Come on!
But most importantly, the 1.6 update lined up with the release of Steam, Valve's new platform to host their games. Moving CS to Steam made the game more accessible than ever. Gone were the days of purchase servers and forum organized lobbies. You could finally play Counter-Strike with anybody. All the tools to play CS were in one place, so the game exploded. People all over the world were playing Counter-Strike. If you were a PC gamer, you played CS, or at least you knew people who played. And for many, this time became known as the golden age of Counter-Strike. I mean, it was so popular that an esports following was made out of it, long before esports were culturally relevant, and more people watched every year. Things were looking bright for the future of Counter-Strike, but then 2 disappointing sequels happened, causing a rift in the CS community. In March of 2004, Counter-Strike Condition Zero came out. It was a different spin on the classic CS formula, focused on single-player campaign rather than multiplayer. Valve had somehow forgotten that their audience was a bunch of competitive sweats. These players didn't want to play a single-player version of Counter-Strike. Then in October of 2004, Valve released Counter-Strike Source, developed by Turtle Rock Studios on a brand new Source engine. Source was meant to be the next iteration, the game to continue the Counter-Strike legacy. There's just one problem. Many players hated it. With large hitboxes, random spray patterns, and movement changes, the game was easier than 1.6 and not nearly as competitive. Source caused a real rift in the CS community because many chose to stay playing 1.6, so both games had competitive scenes going at the same time, and this split damaged the CS scene as a whole. Sadly, the first golden age of Counter-Strike came to an end in 2007. And from 2007 to 2012, the Counter-Strike community really struggled. The competitive scene never reunified under those versions, and a lot of other games started to compete with CS and esports, like StarCraft 2, Dota 2, and League of Legends. Valve did continue to provide updates for Counter-Strike Source after launch, but it didn't seem like they were doing anything to bring players back. Counter-Strike was dying. But then a lifeline appeared. In 2010, a studio called Hidden Path Entertainment began porting Source to console with Valve support. And early on in the port's development, Valve saw an opportunity to create a brand new Counter-Strike game for PC and consoles, which would update and refine the gameplay. So in 2012, Valve released a new version, the new future of Counter-Strike, the game they would call CSGO. And it was bad.
How much bullshit is in CSGO and they're not doing shit about it.
Just like Source, a lot of players had huge issues with CSGO, and for good reason. It had unresponsive movement, fog all over the maps, terrible recoil patterns, and horrendous hit registration. The game that was supposed to reunify the Counter-Strike community wasn't looking good. For the first couple months after CSGO launched, there were only 50k players playing it. The same number of players that were still playing the original Counter-Strike 1.6 and Source. If the goal was to reunite the community, Valve had failed. Even with this lackluster launch, they didn't give up on the game. Valve started churning out updates.
Oh, wow, that is really good.
Andy!
The developers focused on fixing the core issues of the game and even talked directly with the community and esports teams to get feedback. Finally, 6 months after launch, months of feedback and change, the game felt different. Players were starting to like the game. Players from 1.6 and Source. Both sides somehow agreed for the first time, and CSGO was becoming something special. With all the changes, this version struck a great balance between the original CS and CS Source, bridging the gap that had been there for years. This wave of interest from existing players also brought in all sorts of new players. People loved Counter-Strike again, and the reason is simple. You can understand how to play the game in 5 minutes, but you could spend a lifetime mastering it. You don't even need to be a Counter-Strike player to enjoy the game. Millions of hours are spent watching every year, even by people that never play. The gameplay is just so crunchy. Not to mention it's incredibly accessible to play and watch. On top of all of that, Valve added modding tools, custom servers, and game modes for the casual player. With all these new changes, both the casual and competitive scenes took off. And with the rise of the competitive scene came the resurrection of Counter-Strike esports. Beginning with DreamHack in 2013, Valve began sponsoring esports events. And every time the game had a major tournament, the player count permanently increased. By the end of 2016, CSGO had 400,000 people playing consistently, 8 times more than the 50,000 playing on launch. Crazy. But what's even more nuts is that this trend has only continued. Viewership is consistently increasing, and the scene is just getting bigger. It's a feedback loop. For CS, bigger tournaments means more people playing, and more people playing means bigger tournaments. Blizzard and the Overwatch League could learn a thing or two from Counter-Strike. Valve even announced recently requirements for large-scale CS tournaments, rules that encourage a fair and transparent method for team participation. Valve is obviously committed to the health of Counter-Strike as an esport, and they continue to make that known. While most companies who sponsor esports don't care about it, treating their esports like a child they never wanted, Valve has continued to sponsor and put up more and more prize money for Counter-Strike, with every tournament feeling bigger than the last. So does Valve just love esports? So much so that they're willing to burn money on it? Definitely not. There's a reason Valve supports it. Right now, most esports are struggling, with many scenes and teams barely scraping by. Something we may talk about in a future video, so subscribe if you want us to make that, but not Counter-Strike. Something about this game makes Valve a lot of money, a skin economy. Some may say,
who cares? Every game has skins nowadays.
And you're right, but what's different about CSGO is that it's not just skins that they added, but an entire marketplace. A community to trade and buy skins through Steam. And when Valve introduced this system, they had 3 goals in mind to specifically ensure the game's long-term success. Number 1, get players to engage with the market. But how does Valve achieve this? Well, here's where the magic happens. There's no in-game market to buy cases or skins like in Overwatch or Warzone. Instead, you earn skins and cases by playing. But these cases aren't free. To open cases, you have to buy keys from Valve on the Steam Marketplace for $2.50, which forces players to be involved in the marketplace if they want to open their cases. Second way they get their players to engage with the market was to make cases randomly drop a skin from a specific collection. You are shown the potential drop of the case, a probability range from getting something common to getting something extraordinary, and when you open it, the excitement is unreal. Probably because it's gambling. The excitement, the high these people get off opening cases is crazy, but it makes sense. These aren't just skins in a game. It's real money on the line. You just opened a case and got an emerald butterfly knife? Yeah, that's worth $20,000. Not $20,000 in CSGO bucks, real money. These skins are no joke, and it's all because of reason number 2. Valve lets players determine the value of each skin. Because you are forced to buy keys and open randomly generated loot boxes, you rarely get the exact skin you want. So to find a skin you really like, you have to go to the marketplace. But how much does it cost to buy a skin from another player? Well, it depends. This is the most important part of the CSGO economy. Players determine the value of each skin. Valve doesn't set the prices for anything on the market other than case keys. For example, one of the most expensive CSGO skins is the Op Dragonlore, with a price tag running between $4,200 and $400,000, depending on what stickers are on it. That's crazy. What's even crazier is that if you wanted to sell your Dragonlore Op for $10, you could. There's nothing stopping you. This gives players way more control over their inventory than in any other game, and it keeps players extremely engaged. If you don't want something, you can trade it or sell it or get something you do want. You have influence, you have control. You can feel a lot less like a cog in the machine and a lot more like a businessman. There are entire channels on YouTube dedicated to CSGO trading, with lots of videos of trader challenge runs where they start with something inexpensive and work their way up to something much more expensive. You can't do anything like this in other games. There's no trading going on. Probably because the developers set all the prices. They determine the value, not you. Where in CSGO, players can decide what they value most or what skins they really want. 2 players can make a trade where they both feel like they are winning.
We'd hope that the economy would improve the longevity of our game, provide fun and value to our customers, and make it easier for our customers to provide fun and value to each other.
But you've got to engage with the market to get what you want. And after a player does that once, they're likely to do it again and again. Now, Valve doesn't set any prices, but they do influence them. They create scarcity by limiting case drops and limit how often rare items get dropped to the player. Some weapon crates or sticker bundles will only last for a limited time, which creates a finite amount of certain skins. They might be tied to a limited time event, like an esports major. On top of that, skins have different rarities, like factory new or field tested. The more pristine a skin is, the more it's worth. Certain weapons give skins a lot more value because they see a lot more use, like the M4, AK, and OP. Some skins also have the pattern randomly generated. If the pattern on one skin looks way cooler, other players will spend more for it. This is great because it helps keep the market dynamic. You can find entire articles and videos talking about the different variations of the same skin. And that adds an entirely new layer of fun to the skin market. Valve has also released tools to let players create their own skins, letting the community vote on player-made skins and frequently adding those to the game. People who create these skins normally get a cut of the revenue, and this has been estimated to be $420,000 and is a prime example of letting players create value. And what blows me away is that the CSGO skin market is estimated to be worth over $4 billion. Which brings us to number 3, how Valve makes money off all of this. Steam gives game developers a cut when trades are made on the marketplace. First, Valve always gets a 5% cut because they run Steam. Then the game dev gets a 10% cut, which in this case is also Valve. So every single CSGO trade on the Steam marketplace gives Valve 15%. That's a crazy amount of money for absolutely no effort. Think about that. If the marketplace is worth $4 billion and 15% of that value is given to Valve, that's $600 million in Valve's pocket for doing nothing. Valve gets players to engage with the market, lets them set the prices, then they capitalize on the value created by its players. They've got an entire economy living in a single game. It's something every economist should be studying, and is the primary reason why Counter-Strike is growing. But there's one last problem in all of this, and that is Counter-Strike 2. With CS2 releasing, the future of Counter-Strike is up in the air. Will this new update split the community like CS Source, or will it keep everyone together? What about all the skins? What's going to happen to those? Well, Valve knows all these concerns. They're not planning on letting the cash printer slow anytime soon. All of your skins will transfer. CS2 is more like Overwatch 2 than Red Dead Redemption 2. It's pretty much the exact same game with a shiny coat of paint thrown on top. The engine is getting updated, but the gameplay isn't changing. The maps aren't changing, and the guns aren't changing. Nobody wants that anyway. Valve is one of the smartest game companies out there. Nowadays, they rarely invest any time or money into something unless they know it will be worth it. They've already got a great formula with Counter-Strike. The mods will help keep casuals engaged, the esports scene, which Valve supports, helps get new players interested, and a budding skin economy keeps players invested. This formula has been working better and better for the last 11 years. Who says it can't work for another 20? And that's why Counter-Strike will never die. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the video and supporting Going Indie. This week's indie game highlight is Tanks But No Tanks, where you battle your friends in a We Tanks inspired shooter. It's tons of fun, and after chatting with Thomas, the developer, about his experience making the game, I could tell he really put his heart and soul into it. I am meeting with tons more developers to try finding hidden gems like Tanks But No Tanks, so go check it out and support Thomas and his indie development dreams. Thanks!